This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan.
Driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
Well, hi there, everyone, and thank you so much, Parker. I'm your host, Jim Ervin, and this is Time Signatures. John Mayall called him a master of his instrument. Bob Seger called his solo on Like a Rock the single most spectacular solo I'd ever heard. He's the recipient of the W.C. Handy Award for Song of the Year, It's 2 a.m. by Shamika Copeland. No doubt you've heard some of his countless compositions in numerous movies and TV shows, notably in several episodes of the highly acclaimed program Blue Bloods. Having spent 4 years as a guitarist for Fleetwood Mac from 1987 to 1991, he later partnered again with Mick Fleetwood to form the Mick Fleetwood Blues Band, which is Mick's second major foray into the blues, and together they released Blue Again. As a result, our guest was nominated for a 2010 Grammy Award for the Best Traditional Blues category as both artist and producer. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to introduce Grammy-nominated guitarist, singer, and producer. Oh yeah, and rumor has it he's got a new album being released this Friday. MoMojo Records recording artist Rick Vito. Welcome to Time Signatures, man. What an honor to have you. How are you?
Well, thank you so much. Boy, that's an introduction I could take every day. That's very nice of you. Thanks.
Well, Rick, I listen, for those of you that don't know the program, what I like to do is I like to get some stories, okay? I love gathering great stories. So as we dive in here, because there's so much to talk about, yes, we're going to discuss that album in detail. So I would like to begin with you, sir, talking about your journey in music. Where did it all begin for you?
Philadelphia. I was born in that area and was really influenced by Bandstand, their TV show where the kids danced every day after school. And Dick Clark was a big influence. Of course, later went nationwide, but in Philly, he had guest artists that had the hit records on every day. And then on Friday night, he had another TV show which featured even more top names. So I used to watch it regularly every day after school, and early rock and roll Elvis and Chuck Berry and all that was popular at the time. And my mother had a guitar that was a lap steel guitar, acoustic. She played when she was a girl for a short while, and my grandfather brought it over, and I started jumping around the living room and banging on it, so that she picked up on that and got me a rental of a real guitar and some lessons. I just picked it up and just always stayed with it.
Now, how about that old Seeburg jukebox, Rick? I've got to hear a story about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I was later on, a few years later, when my brother and I were old enough, my grandmother had a bar, a tap room, tap room in Wildwood, New Jersey. And one year my father gave us the job of going there before it opened up in the morning. So we'd get there around 5. We had 5 hours to clean the place and do all the floors and restrooms and the glasses and all that stuff. But the cool thing was that she had an old Seeburg jukebox in there. And so we'd have that blasting nonstop. And at the end of every summer, we got to keep the 45s, many of which I still have. And I have 2 of my own Seeburg jukeboxes at home. Even now, they just kind of really made a big impression on me. I love the way the bass pumped out of them, and it just holds a lot of great memories.
Oh, yeah. Now, we're going to step back just a little bit here because you were talking about that first guitar. Your family found that you had an innate talent for playing by ear, didn't they?
Well, they didn't know much about music, but I found that after a while, I was a very poor student of the couple of guys I tried to take lessons from. And the one was my Uncle Frank DePrima, who used to play up in New York for Broadway shows. but he tried to teach me traditionally, and I was a very poor student. My third teacher, when I was maybe 12, he was a rock and roller, and he was real big into James Burton. And he was the one that showed me how to bend strings and such. And he recognized that I could play by ear. So that was a lot more fun for me to listen to songs on the radio or records and play along with them. And that's how I developed my ear for playing.
Very cool. Now, I would love to hear about your early ties to the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet and those subsequent ties that actually formed some associations along the way afterwards.
Um, well, getting back to what influences we had in the 50s to see rock and roll and see and hear rock and roll on TV, Bandstand came first, but second, and not any less important, was the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, which of course their son was Ricky Nelson
Sure.
at the time. And at the close of each show, when Ricky started to get popular as a rock and roll singer, they would do a song. He would do a song, and of course, in his band was again James Burton, the great James Burton. Like one of the guys, at that point in time, uh, who was really kind of stretching out, playing some really interesting lead stuff. Rockabilly blues mixture. He was from Shreveport, Louisiana, so they had a lot of that uh, early rock and roll and Hank Williams into rockabilly kind of influence. So I picked up on him. And later, when I went out to Los Angeles in the 70s, I, for a while, was doing quite a lot of sessions. And one day, the other guy on the guitar chair or in the guitar chair was James Burton.
Oh,
So
wow.
I shared with him my love of his playing and what an influence he was. And we became friends. Later on, we worked together on Hank Williams Jr. record down in Shreveport, where they were both from. And so it's always been a pleasure to be around James, and I learned quite a lot from him.
Oh, I can imagine. Now, as many of your age group did back in the day, you found your love for the blues was growing, largely because of music put out by the Rolling Stones. And it never ceases to amaze me how integral the Stones were to those early blues scenes, especially here in the United States, because musicians here in the States really didn't get a lot of traction early on, did they?
No, it really kind of took the Stones and some of the other English groups to kind of make us aware of our own music that maybe we were missing. Uh, I didn't know who Muddy Waters was. I had heard Jimmy Reed, I'd heard Slim Harpo on local radios, R&B stations,
Sure.
but I never heard like BB King and Freddie King and all that um, until I started getting into the Stones record, and at the time, of course, you could read the credits on the back, which was as much fun as
Oh, yeah.
listening to the music almost. And had these names on there and songs that were written by McKinley Morganfield or Chester Burnett. And no internet, so you had to just sort of figure this stuff out on your own, and that was fun too. So digging on their versions of the blues, I actually transitioned from the Stones and the Animals, say, or some of those other bands, to the Butterfield Blues Band, and they were doing even more authentic
Oh,
versions
yeah.
of the Chicago blues sound. And then it started to to be written about, and sort of word of mouth started getting around, and I started buying a lot of records and studying each of the blues guys, mainly guitarists, B.B. King, Freddie King, Albert King,
Hmm.
Elmore James, all these guys. And so that's kind of the transition of how that progressed.
Yes, sir. Now, what about that first big break with Delaney and Bonnie? I would love to hear about that.
Well, thank you. I was in college, and Delaney and Bonnie had played locally in Philadelphia. And a lady that I knew from one of my classes, who was a singer, came up and she said, "Have you heard of this, Delaney and Bonnie? They have Eric Clapton playing with them." I said, "No, I didn't hear anything about it." She said, "Well, I just saw them in Philly. You got to get this record with on tour with Eric Clapton." So I got it and I loved it. You know, I love their mix of early rock and roll and R&B and gospel and a little blues, you know. And then I got their previous record, was called Accept No Substitute, the original Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. And this was an album that influenced guys in the Beatles and the Stones and all of the LA session players. In fact, many of them were on that record and were featured, like Leon Russell and Jim Keltner, Bobby Whitlock, Rita Coolidge. And I just loved this music. So I learned it all. I just naturally wanted to learn it because they had a great guitar player named Jerry McGee on that record too, who I later became friends with. And when they came in the Philly area, I got my big tape recorder. They didn't even have cassettes then. And I had recorded some stuff with a friend of mine, Rick Valenti, and took it, got myself backstage and introduced myself and played them some stuff. And they were very nice to me. And I'd go and see them whenever they were in the area. And one night they invited me to sit in with them. Of course, I had my guitar with me and I knew all the music. So when I got called up on stage, I was like letting it all out, you know. And they I guess they're turning around like, "Who's this kid?" You know. And I made a good impression. And they advised me if I wanted to get in the music business to move to Los Angeles, which was great advice because that's where it was all happening at the time.
Indeed. And from there, it was off to the races. You did move out to LA in 1971, which ultimately led to some incredible opportunities for you, didn't it?
It did. The Delaney and Bonnie hired me just from going over there and saying hello one day. And they said, "Well, we're going out on tour. Well, we'd like to try taking 3 guitar players this time." You know, because I guess they liked when they had Eric Clapton, George Harrison, and Delaney. And so he gave me my first big break as going on tour.
Very nice. Now, do you ever keep in touch with Eric? Have you run into him at all?
I met Eric only one time, and I was on touring with Bonnie Raitt in Europe, and we opened show for his tour. So I'd see him every day, but I had one nice conversation with him. And that was it. I don't really know him that well.
Okay. Now, I was looking at this who's who of people you worked with: Albert Collins, Lowell Fulson, George Harmonica Smith, who was based out there, Big Joe Turner, and others. Yet you called Albert Collins a personal favorite. How so?
Well, I was playing in a group when I was home from the road. I was touring with John Mayall that year, 75, 76. And when I was home, I was playing with a group called the Juke Rhythm Band. We were pretty in step with all kinds of blues music and all the artists. And my buddy Juke, who was harmonicist and keyboard player, he knew Albert, and they had worked with him before. So we used to play at this place called the Topanga Corral in Topanga Canyon, which was a great club. And every Monday night was blues night. So we booked Albert a couple times and he was just, there was nobody else like him. You know, he just had an energy that was all him. And he was such a sweet guy, a nice guy on and off stage. He was funny and he was powerful and, you know, very electric. And it just was a big influence because I tried to pick up pointers from everybody I worked with, and it wasn't hard to pick up pointers from Albert Collins. I'll tell you, he was an amazing guy.
Sounds like he shared his talents willingly. Rick,
he did.
Talk about that call from Larry Taylor beckoning you back to SoCal while you were on the road touring.
Yeah, that was late 74. And I got a call from Larry saying that John Mayall was looking for a guitar player. And I had just jammed with Larry up at his house a couple times, so we knew each other fairly well. And so he said, let's go up there to his house. He's trying guys out. I said, yeah, let's go up. And there were guys coming out, had gone in to play with John. And so we waited a bit and then went in and played with John. And he just started playing something on the guitar or keyboards, I forget. And just encouraged me to play the way I play. And after 3 or 4 songs, he said, well, I'm satisfied. If you'd like to have this gig, you're in. And I said, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. John Mayall. I would love to join the ranks of Peter Green and Eric Clapton and Mick Taylor and all the other great musicians you've had working with you.
No kidding.
So like 2-3 weeks later, we were in the studio cutting an album. And in January, that was like November, we cut the album in December and we were on the road in January.
Wow.
So he didn't mess around.
No. Man. Now, I truly love that you had an opportunity to play with one of my favorite bands, if only for a short while. And sadly, it was after the Peter Green era. Fleetwood Mac, for me, was the beginning of my rabbit hole excursion into the blues via their 3-album set Before the Beginning, compliments of a man who has become kind of my godfather in the blues. But how did that gig come together for you?
How did I join Fleetwood Mac?
Yes, sir.
Well, I had seen the original band, so I was, tremendously influenced by the band, especially Peter Green, of course,
I can
who was
imagine.
an amazing talent, a great band leader, a great singer, great songwriter, and, fantastic guitar player, just total command of taste and tone, and played all the right things at the right time. I said, that's the way I want to play. That's what I'd like to do right there. He kind of encapsulated it all. And I'd seen everybody, but he made a very strong impression on me when I was 18 or 19 years old. So one night, a friend of mine, John Harriet, who's passed away sadly, was doing a session with Billy Burnett. And I'd known Billy. Billy's great line with me was, oh man, I love your playing. I got to get you on one of my songs. So I called him. I said, let me get him on the phone. I said, Billy, you're doing a session tonight, right? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm coming. It's not going to cost you a dime, but we've been talking about this for years and I'm going to come and play. And he said, great.
Nice.
And Nick was a drummer on the session because they'd been working together in something called Mick Fleetwood Zoo.
Okay.
Which I'm sure it was. So when I got to the session, we had a lot of time while they were setting up, and Mick and I talked about those couple of nights that I saw him in Philadelphia in the early days, and fooled around on a couple songs, I guess, and he liked that. There's so much emphasis being put on the vastly successful 70s version of Fleetwood Mac, but in his heart of hearts, he really loved the original Fleetwood Mac, still does. So that was good. And then a couple of weeks later, he and Billy came to my gig at a club in LA and sat in, and we played blues and that kind of stuff. And so we just hit it off really well. So when Lindsey Buckingham left, Mick called me and wanted to know if I wanted to learn, 10 or 12 of the 70s songs. Christine's, they were going to concentrate on Christine and Stevie songs. So
Sure.
I did. And it was fairly easy for me to learn because I had done a lot of session work over the course of 15 or 17 years, whatever it was. And so I was a fast learner and went down there and we hit it off again. And I suggested, hey, man, why don't we try playing a couple of the old Peter Green things? And we played Rattlesnake Shake and Oh Well, and I Loved Another Woman. And again, at the end of the day, he said, well, this is working out, obviously, and we'd love to have you and Billy in the band. So that's how that happened.
Wow. That is so cool. And
Yeah.
after that 4-year stint, you went off on your own, did a little bit of studio work with Bob Seger, Hank Jr., Bob Mayall again. Boz Scaggs and others. You won the 2001 WC Handy Award for It's 2 a.m., recorded by Shamika Copeland. And
Yeah.
then fate brought you back to work with Mick Fleetwood, didn't it?
Yeah. I had done this record, which was kind of a jump blues and swing kind of record. And the drummer on the record, for the most part, was a guy called Ian Wallace. And I knew that Ian was a friend and a great favorite of Mick. So I sent Mick a copy of the record, and he called me. He said, I love this record, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I live in Hawaii now. He said, would you like to come out and, try playing this stuff? Something like, a mix of what you're doing and then a mix of the old Fleetwood Mac stuff. And I said, that's a great idea. I'd never been to Hawaii. And so we tried a couple of different groups of people and finally settled on the lineup for the Mick Fleetwood Blues Band. And we rehearsed for a little while and then went and did a live gig in, I think it was St. Louis. And our first show was recorded, and that became our album, Blue Again. And
Wow.
oddly enough, for great, just a wonderful way, it was nominated for a Grammy that year for Best Traditional Blues Record. And I co-produced it with Mick, and I was the front man and lead singer, and it was a great experience. And we worked about 10 years doing that. I'd love to
Man.
do it again, except we're so far apart. I'm not really traveling so much as I was before.
Man, I would love to see you two get back together again. But the Mick
Yeah.
Fleetwood Blues Band, live at the Belly Up and Blue Again. I was really excited, I'll be honest with you, to discover that Mick had returned to his blues roots, because when I heard Fleetwood Mac before the beginning from 67 to 70, it was incredible to me. It was absolutely incredible that this band that I had known mostly as a pop band in my growing up years actually had its roots in the blues. And to see him go back to that was such a cool thing. But what was the vibe like when you guys started on those albums, when you were recording those live albums?
Well, it was really a piece of cake. I was listening to a couple tracks from that live record the other day, and I'm going, wow, this is all so effortless. Everybody's just like playing their butts off, and it was a piece of cake. We loved that music so much, and it just was easy for us, and that came in handy down the road.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Rick, the new album is called Slidemaster, and it comes out in
Yes.
just a few days from right now, Friday, April the 3rd, in fact.
Yes.
Fact of the matter is, this is a completely instrumental album, which I honestly have enjoyed, quite frankly.
Thank
What
you.
was the motivation for going completely instrumental? I have to ask.
Well, my last record came out in 2024, so it's been a couple of years. And during that time, I amassed a lot of new material, and a lot of it was vocals, and a lot of it was instrumentals. And I started to realize, hey, it looks like a lot of my instrumentals were done on the slide guitar. It's interesting. And after living or putting together different song lists, so pairing different songs together with the idea of doing a follow-up record, I started to get the idea that, hey, that this might be a good idea to do an instrumental record, and maybe an all slide instrumental record could be the angle. And because I'd always loved Freddie King's first album that I had ever heard. It was like Let's Dance Away and Hideaway with Freddie King, all instrumentals, right? And he could sing like an angel, of course, but still, that was a great record. And I thought it would be wonderful to have at least one all instrumental record under my, under my belt, so to speak. And
Yeah.
so that's how that happened. I just kept fooling around with it, putting different songs together until I had 10 or 12 songs that I really felt worked well together, and went with it.
And you've got some stuff on here that's new, but you also have some stuff that you remixed and remastered, correct?
Exactly right. Yeah. In putting the songs together, I realized, well, geez, I really wish that song could go with this and that song could go with this. So why not make it a collection? It's a collection of my favorite slide instrumentals that were previous released. I'll just, touch them up, remix and remaster them and add them to the new things. So it's kind of the best of both worlds for me.
I'm just going to toss this out here. Anytime you can add Albatross to an album, especially if you can play it, and you can, sir, that's a winner for me. But how about
Thank you.
favorites for you? Did you have any favorites on this album?
Well, I did. The first song is called Vegas Jump. It has a real kind of almost gospel kind of feel, very, very toe tapping. That's kind of a weird expression, but it gets you going. And
Yeah.
then the second song was a song that I liked for a long time called Steal Away, which was the very first hit that came out of Muscle Shoals. It was a vocals by a guy called Jimmy Hughes, I think, and he wrote the song. And it just was, I thought, a good a good vehicle for a slide guitar to because my approach to a lot of what I play on the slide guitar is to emulate the sound of a human voice.
Sure.
Obviously, you're not hampered by frets. You can glide in between notes like a voice does, and that's always been why a big part of why I like the slide. So those two were kind of the springboard for a lot of the rest of the record.
Wonderful. So, do you have any plans for touring for this new album?
I don't have plans at the moment. That could all
Okay.
change. So I don't want to ever say never. But, I spent over 50 years traveling. So
Yes, sir.
it's not new to me anymore. Some of it I enjoyed, some of it I don't enjoy. The situation has to be right. And if that right situation comes along, I just might jump out there. We'll see.
All right. Well, let's tell folks where they can learn all about you, maybe buy some copies of this hot new album, some merch, or give you the right reason to come out on the road and book you for a gig. Where do we send them?
Yeah. Let all those promoters know you want to hear Rick Vito play songs from Slidemaster. You can always find my music at rickvito.com, rickvito.com. And my label is MoMojo. It's not my label, it's the label I'm with, MoMojo records.com. And we have the products on Bandcamp and Amazon and all the places where you can buy CDs. So
Awesome. Well, Rick Vito, I can't tell you what an honor it's been to have you here with me today on Time Signatures. I wish you all the best. And I truly hope that you do end up in or close to Michigan, because promise you, I will come out and support your visit if you do.
well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. If you hang on for 1 minute, let me tie the ribbons on and I'll say goodbye to you properly in just a moment. As this episode comes to a close, I want to tell you about the VFW National Home, located just about 30 minutes southwest of my current location in Eaton Rapids, Michigan. The VFW National Home assists military, veterans, and their families with children by creating a foundation of services and resources to achieve their personal and family goals in order to move forward in a positive, safe, and healthy environment. Among the many things offered through the VFW National Home are single-family homes within the community at no cost, tutoring, classes, secondary financial assistance, and educational resources to empower and grow. And by the way, they also offer licensed daycare for the residents at no charge. Please visit vfwnationalhome.org today to learn more and also to make a tax-deductible donation in any amount. And as always, thank you so much for your consideration. And that wraps up this edition of Time Signatures. Once again, my thanks to our guest, Rick Vito, but also to you, for without you, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you, keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues one story at a time, that's my mission. Until next time, so long, everybody.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
You know I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.
Baby, I'm